welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Torres, live from Mars's offices in Paddington, London, and with the one and only Christina Pronounce the name well?
You did.
How are you?
I'm really good.
Good.
How are you?
Very good. Had a busy week in London.
Good.
Recorded some episodes. I was also a judge in the Retail Media X Awards.
I saw that. Yeah. Really good.
I actually had the opportunity to give out an award. I did that. So
easy.
Yeah, had a dinner last night with Feedonomics that went very well.
Brilliant.
And here we are to end the week well. Barca won the league as well, so I'm in a
congratulations
in a good mood. Thank you. So tell me a bit about we're gonna talk about later about your role at. Tell me about your career background. We were having a coffee in the getting coffee, and you told me you worked at Nespresso at some point. How did you get here?
Yeah. So I started my career at Unilever, doing sales and marketing, and then I was at Nespresso. So I had these great formative years in CPG companies, and then I then started up my own online business.
Oh,
yeah. So started up a D2C fashion business.
Wow.
Once I'd realised from Nespresso that I'd fallen in love with e-com, and was like, this is brilliant. I can do this, as you do when you. And then from there, kind of took those skills and then went to Coty. And so for the last 11 years, I've been at Coty and Mars running digital, which has been brilliant, over in North America and now back in London.
And you started your career in sales, marketing? Sales.
Yeah. Did sales, marketing, channel work as well.
What did you do in Nespresso? Because Nespresso is like only vertical, right?
Yeah.
They have very little key accounts.
Yeah. So it's really great actually, because you're owning the brand and you're kind of helping the machine partners think about the experience, and everything you do is all about, does this work for the end coffee consumer?
Yeah.
So you do a lot of experience work as well with your customers inside the store, and like really amazing grounding. And I think joining up dots of like learning all about CRM.
Yeah.
Like the role of the Nespresso
And
Club.
you were doing e-com.
Doing sales, and then the latter year I started getting into e-com, and then was 28 and was like, I can do this. I can set up my own e-commerce company.
Well, I'm sure it was a good experience.
Great experience.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And Nespresso does have that element that even if it's part of Nestlé, it is very entrepreneurial.
It is.
And at least when I knew them 10 years ago, they were also running the countries very like separately.
Yeah.
So you had that more entrepreneurial. It was entrepreneurial with very formal dress code at the same time.
It was very formal dress code, yeah.
Which probably they've changed like everyone else has by now. How has it been to like work in all these different categories? Like Unilever, you've been in personal, I don't know what category you were in Unilever.
I was in food at Unilever.
In food.
Yeah. I think when you work in various different verticals, I'm always trying to think like, what could I take from other? And I was thinking about this when I came into pet, like scaling, I guess, blueprints. And do you know what's really interesting is beauty and pet are really similar. Like they both require education. Beauty kind of thinks more about cultural trends and storytelling, but pet, similar to beauty, really cares about high loyalty dynamics. So I think I always try and look at like, what are the things I can learn from each? And then obviously the demand like generation's totally different. So when I had my own business, it was all about word of mouth and like full funnel work of how do I get the person on the site? How do I get them to stay with me? And then I worked in luxury beauty for a bit as well. They were all about like, how do I sell the dream?
Yeah.
I remember looking after Harrods when I was younger, and I was the first person to put in a really big launch like Chloe, and it was all about the experience. And then in kind of mass beauty, you're thinking about trial. And now I work in private. I've never worked. We're thinking about how do you mutually create value with your customers. So I think we're really clear on how we create that both with our pet parents and also our retailers. So
pet parents, that's how you call your customers, no?
Pet parent.
I like it.
Are you a pet parent?
I'm not a pet parent. And I'll probably never be. But I know people that are pet parents. I'm also allergic to cats.
Okay.
Which doesn't help. And
so we need to get you a dog.
Not yet. Maybe at some stage of my life. But I live in the city. I don't think it would be fair for a dog to live in my 60 square meter apartment. So what are you doing? What's your current role at Mars Petcare?
Petcare.
It's important to say.
I know,
Petcare.
It's the pet side. So today I lead commerce. We call it connected commerce. So we have 21 markets. So I lead the value side of how we create our value, capability, and help. Well.
Mm-hmm. So in your role, how are you like connecting all the sales channels? Because you're doing an online role, but obviously like the border that, like, I think when you started e-commerce, it was very clear, e-commerce and retail, very separate. And now it's kind of like
together.
Yeah. I can actually remember when I first started headhunting in 2013.
Yeah.
That we were headhunting for a big consumer goods company based here in Slough. You probably know which one it is. It's not Mars, it's the other one. It's the pink one. And they were figuring out like e-tailing managers and so on. And they had were figuring out what profiles, because there was hardly anyone in the industry doing it. So we were interviewing people from Google and from Facebook and from other consumer goods companies, but they didn't really know if the future would be like online account management, which or doing their own DTC. And there was kind of an idea that everyone would end up having their own DTC.
It's amazing. Yeah. I remember when I kind of closed my business and I went into Coty, and it was 2014. And I remember it was always just one person. They own it. You're a small percent of net revenue, go for it. And those days were amazing. But also your role, you had to integrate everybody. And you're right, the evolution of that has been amazing. So we call e-commerce connected commerce now. We feel really proud of that. I think which is great. And for us, it's just, we called it that because we felt like it was the alignment of all different paths to the consumer. And we're looking at it from the consumer, which is the pet parent, the customer, which is our retailer, and then how do we make our teams really work together? So kind of not that. And then how do we look at that? How do we look at the kind of sales teams all together? Super hard. And we've done it with data, actually. Way back feels like way back, but in 2023, I put together a business case for Mars. We can't see anything, and we should be able to see more. And our poor kind of associates, as we call them in our markets, should be able to see more. And how do we connect everything? And there were so many different tools across the 21 markets. So we built an in-house kind of data analytics tool, and what we're now able to see 6 core capabilities. So it includes category. It also includes what's going on with the shopper, retail media, sales in, sales out. And it's incredible to watch everybody be like, oh my goodness, I didn't know this. And that's the way we've done it, because we had to just offer up the transparency of the data with it.
So it's not only like selling online, but it's also using these digital tools and the data that you're getting to empower all the organization. No?
Yeah, because we know that 70% of people that interact with digital will claim that it influenced something purchased in store, online, where it's important to get a read of everything, because it all makes the flywheel work.
Yeah. Interesting. How do you keep that consumer in mind? Because I think that sometimes it's very easy to get lost in internal stuff and customer stuff, and not, it's different, the customer, which is the key account, and the
I think I'm lucky here because we call our pet parent, and we are obsessed with putting our kind of pets and pet parent at the heart of everything we do. So all the time we're asking our teams, does this make, if I think about what I do, does it make the experience commerce just a transaction, or is commerce an experience? So we've done things like, we used to have Perfect Store, and all the great providers that you can get to look at your store. We're now calling it the Perfect Pet Parent Experience.
Oh, interesting.
And we're now working with wonderful agencies. So we have one in particular, pieces of data to look at the kind of pet parent journey. And within that, we can see things like, if you're going to purchase a cat, you are 16 weeks out thinking about, what do I need? How will that cat become part of my family? So we've started to do things like that. And I'm just finding the more people know what to do to really serve the consumer.
Yeah, but it's an interesting consumer as well, because they're buying something for their pet.
Yeah. Yeah, and like if I go back to what we were talking about earlier about the blueprints, the category itself has an amazing subscription rate. Like, in many cases, over 55%, which is amazing that people will do that, will keep purchasing the same food. And, that's important for them.
If you think back to when you started working and now with this consumer centricity, I think that's really changed, no?
Really changed.
Affected ways of working, you think? Or
yeah, because I think before we were just trying to learn what e-commerce meant and what were the levers. And I've always been obsessive. I used to call it at Coty, brilliantly boring basics. Get those right before we try and do something else. So I think that's not changed, but the data that we can all get access to has really advanced. And of course, you've got AI coming in as well. So
yeah, totally. An interesting one. So you've obviously grown into a VP position. So you have a significant number of people that report into you while you're in a global role. But anyhow, people that what's your view of leadership in the current hybrid working model? Today we're here at the Mars Petcare office. Friday, it's pretty quiet. So how do you do that?
Yeah, I think what I've learned I think leadership's really, really changed. More humility. We look at Mars we have a kind of survey that we do every year, and two of the things there are how engaged are the people, but also how energized are they? And I think energy is really important. Where do your teams get energy? And then I think leadership today, particularly in these e-com roles, to build something that the business really understands, enrolling everybody and making sure that everybody that encounters it believes in it. So you've got to become quite a big galvanizer as well. They're not easy roles. And I love, one of my favorite things to do ever is to help younger people that are coming into these pretty scary.
Yeah.
I'm it's okay. This is what you can do. Because once you've done the kind of galvanizing piece, then you've got this brilliant strategy, then you've got to track it and you're accountable. So you're a person with many hats, I think.
What's your personal style, if you like, of when you go because you're global, but execute and market?
Yeah.
What's your way of doing that?
I think because I've done global and local, I always think the markets are my customer. So I'm and my team are great at it too. If the market needs us, we're available. Because one, they're the eyes and ears, and I'm serving. Because as I say, some of them are running Southeast Asia, massive teams. And they're oh my goodness, I've now got to start shifting really fast, and they're iterating all the time. So often I'm their thought partner, and I'll be up really early on calls with them. And that's the joy that I get in my job, helping the associates do that.
Do you go to the markets much?
Yeah.
How important is that? Also coming from a few years where we couldn't travel.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a difference in that?
Yeah, I think you can get a lot done over calls and you can understand each other. But I think when you get into the market and you do, when you do store walks, I still love doing really seeing what the consumer's buying and asking questions. And it's just brilliant. And you really pick up by osmosis even more of the culture. Because when you're doing a global job, the culture's so important.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it must be an interesting one for you, having been in different companies and all very different cultures, quite strong cultures. In customer, I mean, we're all people, but it's very different when you're selling beauty than when you're selling pet food, no?
Yeah.
I guess it's important to go to the markets and see because then you have different categories, different, not necessarily different consumers, but different occasions and different markets.
like I say, there's all these red threads, and one of the things we're looking at the moment is in beauty. We did a great piece of work on occasions, and now I'm like, why are we not looking at occasions with pet parents? Like, how important is the day that the person adopts their dog, and how important is the birthdays or Halloween or and we're really giving a great experience. I think it's so important. Yeah.
And with talking about like leadership and attitude and role models, I think there's quite a difference, no? I think that like your generation of leaders is very different to the current generation of like CEO. Because I remember when I started working, it was kind of fashionable to be like a bit of an asshole, if I can say it like that, in leadership positions and be like very tough and so on. I think that now it's changed to a much more friendly, authentic.
I think it's just, I can't be anything other than authentic. Made mistakes for sure. I think like my worst mistake was in the middle of COVID, and I was working at Coty, and it was, high COVID, and I was in New York, and I was in Manhattan in a tiny apartment, and my team were in tiny apartments, and there were 45 of them. I remember feeling like really responsible for them, really responsible that all the revenue I felt at that time was coming from my function. And really just shoved myself into the role loads, and I was coming up with all these great iteration like things, and I remember sharing it too much with the team, and for me, she just ran me and said, Chris, you're scaring everybody. Keep the big thoughts to yourself, or share with me, just stop releasing the thoughts constantly. They're going through enough. And I was like, oh yeah, kind of thought I was helping them. It was just it was just amazing that she felt she could have shared that with me. It was such a
she felt comfortable sharing the feedback, because that's something that as a leader, you always have to try to get feedback from your team, but it's very difficult because to tell your boss that you don't like something they're doing.
Yes. Brave of her.
Brave of her. No, good. But also I think that if you instill that right way as well, because if not, it's very easy to create a whining culture and a moaning culture. So you have to try to do it. I think it's always a good idea to have like the framework of like, okay, if you have a problem, come with like one or two solutions, no?
Yeah. And I think just as a leader, you have to set your story. Really believe in consistency as well. So I'm always at the beginning, this is me, this is what I expect, this is how you'll get the best of me, this is how you certainly won't get the best of me. And I'm really open, like talk to me. And also I want to learn. Like I love it when I've got hungry people in the team. Because they're constantly teaching me.
Yeah, I guess that's something important. Well, it's key, to hire the right people.
Always.
And not be afraid of people that overshadow you and so on. Like that's the worst. I've had it, and it's the worst. So
I think I always ultimately you want your people one day to far surpass you, and I want to be sitting, begging their EA, can I have lunch with them one day? That would be amazing. And I think it will probably happen for quite a few at the moment, actually.
What do you think of? Do you think that CEOs in like 10 years will come from e-com?
Yes.
Why?
I think like the breadth that you have to understand in e-com, and we've been doing it for a while. I worked once for this amazing CDO, and I kind of said like, how did you get here? And how did you do this? And, he was like, you're working fully end to end. Your job is, and where do I need them filled? And, he really talked to me loads about the end-to-end journey. And I was like, yeah, this is why we can do this, because I have to interact all the time with the marketeers all the way through to supply chain. And that is ultimately the role of a CEO, is knowing enough about everything and being able to pull higher view and being able to talk the languages of all of those functions.
Yeah.
So I think we're instinctively being trained for that the minute we start an e-com.
Yeah. And if you were like a manager or director in e-com, what would you recommend them in terms of? I know that this question is lacking context because it really depends on where you're coming from before. Would you recommend them to stay in e-com? Would you recommend them to do cross-functional moves?
It really depends. I think you've got an option of cross-functional moves. I often think I'm going to go and get a job in supply chain at some point. So I think doing different functional pieces of work. I also think if you're going to be a good e-com leader, always have a business grounding. So if you can get a slot into a marketing role, or if you come from a classic CPG role, great. Use that and get, or go back into a commercial role. And then I also think like staying where you are and learning the different functions within e-com will serve you as well.
So like doing local, doing global.
Yeah. I think what I'm trying to say is like, don't be lost. Like there's so much to learn in this, and be expansive and go really broad.
Yeah, that's a danger to fall in, that you really like climb fast within a function where there's scarcity, and then you get to a certain level and you
just don't know. And
you could get up, and two, it's just very narrow.
Yeah. And I honestly, some of the best people I've hired have come from business, and then I've taught them e-com. Because fundamentally what you're trying to do is the stuff that you learned when you were a kid and I was a kid about what's a demand space, what's a category plan, all of that when you go into e-commerce. And then all you're doing with someone is teaching them, hey, this is how you look at data. This is how you speed all this up and think in an agile way. And they work really well together. So you're right. You don't want to become obsolete.
Yeah. And it's true that like most of today's e-com leaders were not in e-com when it first started growing. And I think it's back to the customer centricity part. It's understanding the whole business and the whole mission.
Yeah.
Rather than just being in a silo, no?
Yeah.
I think.
I remember being, I think I was like 20 years old, and I was at Unilever, and I had a field sales stint, and I remember he was the head of Europe. I'd love to find this guy one day. And I remember, driving, he was next to me, and I said to him, yeah, tell me how you got the senior. And and thinking he would say, because at the time I was very, very much like that. I was thinking, he's going to tell me he like did loads of sales and he was amazing and the best person ever. He was like, I just did a really good job and I grew out and I kept wanting to learn. I remember thinking, you're not going to go very far. And like now I just want to go and find him and say, oh my God, you were right.
Yeah. Mel, I think that the learning element is super important, no?
Yeah.
Because the learning means that you're growing, no?
Yeah.
And people that I know that have had like a good career because they've always looked for that learning experience.
Yeah.
They always say they didn't go for the money, but I'm sure they didn't compromise on it either, right?
Yeah. But I think you have to keep learning in these jobs. Sure. Any job now. I read so much. All my Google News is crafted. So all of my favorite topics. And I look at it every morning because you have to stay abreast now.
Yeah.
Business is changing so much.
Yeah, the business, the world, everything. Speaking of change, how do you work with technology? Because it's like intrinsically related, but you're not in a technology role.
No, but you have to know enough about it, and you have to be the business translator. So one of my favorite things is working with, becoming almost like the product leader role. So allowing me coming up with the business case, the use case, and then to build it, and then working with them to say, no, that won't quite work. We need it for this, and iterating on it. That's one of my favorite things in my job actually today. And now, of course, we're putting AI through. And we're doing a great piece of work at the moment with one of our partners in AI. And what I'm loving is because I think when you're in these roles, you have to think in a like system-based way of how does the workflow go to that person, to that person, to that person. Yeah. And that all of those agents are going to start doing that for you, which is just amazing.
Yeah. Agentic basically means that you have like a person would do.
Yeah.
Well,
and
probably
really
probably
can
like 100 people.
Yeah, and really can stitch it together. Brilliant.
Yeah. That would be, wonder what like regulation they'll put in place for that. Because I don't know, you can imagine, I mean, it's fascinating and it's very effective for sure, but you can imagine agents work.
And we do a lot of like, we've got wonderful guardrails at Mars actually, and brilliant teams that like really want to understand what we're doing and kind of guide us where we should be playing, where we shouldn't. And so I feel very supported in that. Yeah.
So this wouldn't be a regular FMCG Guys episode. Well, it's not a regular one because we're recording But without our famous last question, which is, if you went back to your beginning of your career, you were starting in Unilever, driving around, and with what you know now, what would be like one piece of advice you would give yourself?
I'm going to say, find your cabinet of people that you trust and that you can build with. And I'm saying that because that was my big takeaway from my business, that everyone has a point of view when you have a business of like, have you tried? Have you tried? And you're like, Now, later, as I've gone through my career, I have probably 5 people that I really trust. And I go to them with like business challenges. I like really lean in when I'm having like personnel ideas or like thinking. And oh my God, it's just brilliant to have people you really trust and that know you and harsh with you as well.
And that you know also who to ask for what expertise, because maybe somebody will be very good at giving you advice on tech or organization, but maybe not so good on how to manage a person.
Because you're taking all those like critical learning moments yourself for sure, but I think you have to have a level of vulnerability to be, I think I'm in a sticky situation here, or thinking this, am I on the right path?